how the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes? How did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement. Look,
heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. Yeah, so everybody keeps, I mean, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
The popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime. And we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary.
You're totally right.
As we now enter the final month of Joe Biden's presidency, and for the sake of argument, it hasn't been a good one. The Democrats lost the White House, Senate, and House in the November election. Meanwhile, this week, FBI Director Christopher Wray announced plans to resign at the end of the Biden administration as President-elect Donald Trump takes office in January. The news comes amidst a bombshell report from the Justice Department that revealed the FBI had at least 26 confidential informants on the ground when the Capitol was stormed on January 6, 2021. The report says most of the informants engaged in illegal activity during the chaos. The Justice Department says only 3 of its 26 informants present had been instructed to observe potential domestic terrorist suspects on the day of the riot. The rest of the 23 appear to have gone to the Capitol on their own accord. Upon hearing news of the report, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance posted the following on X, quote, "For those keeping score at home, this was labeled a dangerous conspiracy theory months ago," end quote. So 23 folks for the FBI were in the crowd. And we're just finding that out. Didn't hear anything about that for the election. Didn't hear anything about that when the quote-unquote insurrection was broached by Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee, by President Biden before her, by Democrats in both the House and the Senate as they articulated the belief that Donald Trump was a danger to democracy and using this as a profound, illuminating bullet point to make that case. And now here we are yet again finding even more evidence to Donald Trump's claims when he articulated that the process is rigged, the Democrats are this or that. They're talking about us, but look at what they do. We don't know all the details. It's a report. Justice Department comes out with this. That's not my big issue. My big issue is that I'm really, really sick and tired of every time I turn around finding something else that the Democrats have lied about or downplayed or misrepresented along the way. Where's the $1.5 billion that was given to the Democratic Party? Where is it? Where'd the money go? Why was Oprah given $2.5 million? Why was Al Sharpton's National Action Network given that much money? Before interviews, by the way. Why? I think it was $500K for the National Action Network. Why? I want to be clear. I don't have any problem with the National Action Network taking that money because they don't have a lot of money. I have more of a problem with Oprah taking $2.5 million when she's worth over $1 billion. But speaking to us as if her heart and soul was so immersed in supporting Kamala Harris. Well, then why didn't you do it for free? I'm just asking. I'm just asking these things because I think it's important. And I think that the time has arrived where we have to stop letting stuff go all the time, particularly when it comes to the left. I mean, I see Republicans like Megyn Kelly or Officer Tatum or Candace Owens or, you know, the Sean Hannitys of the world. You know what I'm getting tired of? You know what I'm getting to the Democratic Party? You know what I'm getting really pissed off about? I'm getting really ticked off. And every time they open their mouth about something pertaining to y'all, they seem right. I would love to argue with Sean Hannity. How can I? Do you know what Sean Hannity used to do to me when I told him Kamala Harris had a chance? He'd laugh. Like literally, genuinely giggle. He'd go on TV and put on his straight face to y'all You got to be concerned. This election could go either way. He laughed. He wasn't concerned about her. Before I called out Biden, he was calling Biden Sleepy Joe. What's percolating on social media today? Just go and look at it, y'all. Joe Biden is caught napping at an African summit in Angola for at least a full minute. They didn't say whether he was snoring or not. That's about all that was missing. But he was clearly asleep. I'm not going to pardon my son. I want to state for the record, I have no problem with him pardoning Hunter Biden. I had a problem with him trying to act like it was unjust what was being done in pursuit of getting after my son because they wanted to get to me. All you had to say was, I'm pardoning my son because he's my son. You couldn't just say that, though. You know why you couldn't say that, President Biden? Because you had been telling us it was the last thing that you were going to do. And why did you say that? Why did Karine Jean-Pierre, remember how she said he will absolutely not pardon his son? It's all over social media right now. They kept saying it. It's everywhere. How many times did the Democrats tell us no one's above the law? No one's above the law. No one's above the law. Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Elizabeth Warren, who makes you feel like your soul is going to hell if you don't agree with her. Inconsistency after inconsistency after inconsistency. We can argue policies. We can argue politics all day long. But the Democrats worked really, really diligently to make the case that the right had a monopoly on insidious, evil tendencies, corrupt tendencies, duplicitous, hypocritical, untruthful tendencies. And every time they made those accusations, we turn around and find out that at least some of them are guilty of the same shit.
Yeah, Stephen A. It's called projection, right? You figured out that the Democrats project. That's the only thing they're actually good at. The only thing they're good at is projection. Everything they say about Republicans and Trump is simply just an admission of what they're doing themselves, right? That's all it is. Again, smart people realized this a long time ago, right? NPCs, they're just realizing it, right? They're just getting on board.
Time I make a comment that's critical of the Democratic Party or the left, I get accused of being a pundit for the right. Sick of it. Sick of the Democrats walking around like they have such a higher moral compass, a higher moral foundation than everybody else. No, enough of that demagoguery. Enough of that fear mongering. No, your behinds need to go out there and learn to politic better to win. Make sure your issues are better. Make sure you're capable of doing a better job. Wes Moore, Governor of Maryland, you'd have my vote tomorrow, my brother. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I also like Byron Donald, representative out of Florida. That's where I'm at with it. I'd love for Wes Moore to be the president of the United States in 2028. I'd love for Byron Donald to be the next governor of Florida. There, I said it. If that ain't independence, I don't know what is. But I'm sick of all of this. I really am. Democrats, you lost. You got your butts whipped. Own it, live with it, accept it, embrace it, and look in the damn mirror. And stop acting like the problem lies with others. It lies with you. Your messengers were weak. Your message was weaker. And I know that because the American people said so in droves. Own it and get off your moral high horse.
And we all know what Roland Martin likes to do to any man that disagrees with him on politics.
You say what we say at home. So you're right. When you're sitting opposite of Scott Jennings, you got to jump in his ass. You got to jump in his ass. Jump in his ass. His ass. You gotta push back immediately. Jump in his ass.
Yeah, so let's watch Roland Martin jump in Stephen A. Smith's ass, which is probably something that he enjoys quite a bit, to be honest with you.
Every time they open their mouth about something pertaining to y'all, they seem right to make the case that the right had a monopoly on insidious, evil tendencies, corrupt tendencies, duplicitous, hypocritical, untruthful tendencies. And every time they made those accusations, we turn around and find out that at least some of them are guilty of the same shit. I don't know about y'all, but I'm sick of all of it. I'm sick of all of it. they've actually made Donald Trump look like he was right instead of them.
You know, Stephen A. normally dons a cowboy hat when he's talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I have no idea what the hell Stephen A. was just talking about. I know Stephen A. I respect Stephen A. Stephen A., you know sports. On this, you know what the hell you're talking about. How he's pissed off, and the Democrats, and Trump said stuff was rigged. And y'all, MAGA is running that clip everywhere. Oh, they are saying, oh, see, even Stephen, the truth. They always knowing the truth. Go to my iPad. Associated Press, Fact Focus. Inspector General's January 6th report misrepresented as proof of FBI setup. The basis of what the right has been saying is that January 6th was fine, it was great, it was wonderful, but the FBI, it was a setup. The FBI, they were behind the whole deal. They were agents. They were the ones who were starting stuff. The report, this is the AP, the Watchdog report, examined a number of areas, go back, including whether major intelligence failures preceded the riot and whether the FBI in some way provoked the violence. Claims spreading online focus on the report's finding that 26 FBI informants were in Washington for election-related protests on January 6, including 3 who had been tasked with traveling to the city to report on others who were potentially planning to attend the events. Although 17 of those informants either entered the Capitol or a restricted area around the building during the riot, none of the 26 total informants were authorized to do so by the Bureau, according to the report, nor were they authorized to otherwise break the law or encourage others to do so. That's the report. And so when Stephen A. is going on, they said here, making Trump out to be true. No, he lied. He lied. Claim. A December 2024 report released by the DOJ's Office of the Inspector General is proof that the January 6th Capitol riot was a setup by the FBI. The facts, that's false. The report found that report found that no undercover FBI employees were at the riot on January 6th and that none of the Bureau's informants were authorized to participate. Informants, also known as confidential human sources, work with the FBI to provide information, but are not on the Bureau's payroll, undercover agents, or employed by the FBI. Those are facts. And so for Stephen A. and Clay Travis and Sage Steele, all the rest of these people, let me help y'all out something. I'm about to help y'all out. The FBI and the state police and the DEA and the ATF and a sheriff's office and a local police department and a campus police department, even top flight security, doesn't come out and tell the public who the fucking informants are.
Exactly were they doing? And in fact, some of them, as we learned from this report, entered the restricted area, went into the Capitol. Were they inciting anything? Mm-hmm. Were they enticing anyone to go with them? I really would love to know what exactly they were saying to the people in the groups that they were part of. I also think it's interesting that this report comes out the day after Chris Wray resigns. It seems to me that he may not have wanted to contend with the questions that, of course, are going to emerge from everything that we're learning today. And the other point I'd like to make is something that David Spunch just raised, where he said that Matthew Graves, who's the U.S. attorney here in Washington, D.C., did not prosecute any of those confidential human sources, spies, that did enter the Capitol that day. And his office, Graves' office, did put out a statement and said that they did not generally prosecute anyone who just went into the Capitol and didn't commit other crimes. My question there is, what does generally mean? How did they make those decisions? And why weren't those particular paid spies part of that group?
The 23 confidential human sources, just reading through this, Carrie, 3 of them entered the Capitol during the riot. An additional 11 entered the restricted area around the Capitol, to your point. Based on what we have learned so far in the details of this report, how would you characterize the findings?
Well, it's very interesting. I think it's especially interesting given that people who were, some of them were just, I think, internet sleuths and the like, have been talking about this for years. And it was only, I think, a couple of years ago that a DOJ attorney in court made the admission that some of these people were present that day. But if you remember, anyone who even raised the possibility that there were paid FBI spies part of what happened, who were part of what happened on January 6th, they were deemed crazy, conspiracy theorists, and the like. Now, look, confidential human sources are a law enforcement tool that are used in all kinds of situations, and we know that some of these people were apparently part of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. But again, why so many? What were they doing? What were the conversations they were having? And if they were, in fact, according to the IG and the FBI, not authorized to be there, then why weren't they prosecuted like everybody else who were prosecuted for similar issues?
Because the informants are inside the groups. The Proud Boys, that racist group, the FBI had people on the inside feeding them information. You can't arrest somebody unless a crime is committed or unless they were planning, let's say, to kill somebody. Every law enforcement agency has undercover cops. These were not undercover agents. They were informants. So, Stephen A., what were Democrats lying about? What were they lying about?
Well, I mean, Democrats have lied about the economy, right? They said inflation was transitory. They lied about the border. They claimed it was closed. It's actually open. They lied about crime. They lied about Joe Biden, right? So, again, it's not just this one thing. It is the tons of things Democrats have lied about. But, yeah, Roland Martin pretends as if he don't know, right? He don't know. What are Democrats lied about, right? Fascinating stuff. This is a screenshot right here.
All of a sudden, MAGA's like, oh, no. This is all the FBI. No! They were informants. Tell us what's going on. Feed us information.
Have people that are telling the truth about what this is, which we're doing, and there are people that are out there that are trying to spin what the truth is into something that fits a narrative. So yes, I can see how people can mistake an FBI informant for an FBI agent. That's why it's important that we tell people an informant is not an agent. And it's why it's important that people like Stephen Smith not go off on a rant like these are FBI agents when in fact they're informants. Again, almost every probably gang activity you see, drug sales, whatever, have informants, local police, state police, FBI involved somewhere in there. The best thing the Republicans can do now is just like put this FBI thing away into bed. It's a conspiracy theory, completely untrue. And I will say quickly, the FBI and the federal government should have right away said, yes, we had, 26 informants or whatever. The fact that it's been 3 or 4 years has actually created this theory of conspiracy, but truly, it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, as I've often said about him, I don't have a problem with somebody jumping into different genres, but you need to apply the same journalistic principles that you use in sports, Stephen A. Smith, to the politics. And you're not doing that in any way, shape, or form. You're serving as a puppet for these guys. It makes me question who you really voted for. And just like with the lady, Miss Lee, the Asian American woman, it seems like people are doing their best to curry favor. This is with Trump and his ilk. This is factually inaccurate, and it's disgraceful that Stephen A. Smith continues to jump into politics when he does not know what he's talking about. And the fact that he would put insurrection with air quotes shows everything that it says about where he really sees things. And people need to really start calling him out like you did tonight when he's doing this type of nonsense. And I can't wait for the clip to share it. Stephen A. Smith, if you're going to jump into this fray, either know what you're talking about or just come out and say you're 100% MAGA so everybody can be clear about it, because you can't keep trying to straddle the fence and think anybody on this side of the world, meaning this side of the truth, is going to respect you.
But let me go a step further. I'm a registered independent. There's people on Roland Martin Unfiltered. By the way, watch that. The brother's brilliant. I got love for him. Got over 1.5 million subscribers. Ain't trying to dissuade anybody from watching my man Roland Martin, because I watch him. What I'm saying is these people that were behind the scenes before they came on as your panelists, I recall one person saying, I either need to know what the hell I'm talking about or admit that I'm 100% MAGA. I got news for you. I'm neither. I don't completely know all the intricate details, nor am I MAGA. I'm a registered independent who voted for Kamala Harris. Oh, by the way, they tried to sit up there and say, I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I'm sorry, I thought y'all were about facts. I did vote for her. I had my issues. I had my reservations. But I was unapologetic about who I was voting for, and I was very transparent about it. Where's your facts? So you get to engage in innuendo, express frustration, but I can't? Why not? Every time we turn around, all I was trying to say is that something repeatedly comes up that gives the right fodder to say, see, look what they did. When President Joe Biden decided to pardon his son Hunter, I got no problems with that. But I did have a problem with them lying about it for months, saying, we're about the rule of law. We're about the rule of law. We're about the rule of law. He said he's not going to pardon Hunter. They're about the rule of law, the rule of law, the rule of law. And then all of a sudden he pardons him and you hear crickets. So here come the right again. See, they're lying. I've often joked about people like Sean Hannity and other conservatives that I know that if you are a Republican and you shot somebody in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue in New York City, the first words that would come out of their mouth is the Democrats did it first. Because their real salty position is not about acting like they're holier than thou. It's about the Democrats always acting like they're on a higher moral ground and they're above board when one nugget of evidence after another always comes forth showing us they're not. That is frustrating for somebody who doesn't know all the facts and intricate details and studies this night and day like Roland Martin. Everybody's industry or chosen profession isn't following what's happening on Capitol Hill and everything associated with it. People working 9 to 5s, taking care of families, getting stuck in traffic for 2 hours a day, preoccupied with an abundance of other things, relying on others to give them information, but also frustrated that everybody's got to spin. That's all I was saying. I didn't take a definitive position against anybody into perpetuity. I'm simply making the point that it gets frustrating to see little nuggets of intel always leaking out, usually after the fact, incriminating one side or the other all the damn time. And Roland Martin will come up with his facts and he'll spew them out for the world to know. That doesn't erase the perception. And Roland Martin, you know this better than me, bruh. Perceptions provoke people's attitude while they walk to the polls, even more so than the facts. It's not that the facts don't matter, but that they always seem so debatable. Ultimately, it comes back to how you feel. Am I clear enough, B? Am I convoluted now, fellas, ladies? I'm a frustrated voter. I watched the Democrats get their ass kicked. I watched them in the aftermath of the election literally say, well, Trump really didn't win the popular vote. I mean, he didn't get 50% of the vote. Who cares? He won the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. He won all the swing states. He increased in practically every demographic. And you got people coming on the airwaves. Well, it really wasn't a referendum against the Democratic Party because, you know what? He didn't get 50% of the vote. He didn't get 50% of the popular vote. Really? They got the White House, the House, and the Senate. I was speaking macro. I was just saying, hey, yet another thing that they can point to stake some claim to how they've been victimized by the hands of the left. Are they probably lying? Some of them, yeah, sure. But what are the Democrats doing? The Democrats, they're for the working class, they're for the working class, they're for the working class. Well, the working class doesn't feel that way. Then after the election, we're hearing some Democrats go out there and they're talking about how too many people in the party are about catering to the elite. Well, that's what they were accusing the Republicans of doing. You see how confusing it gets? Not for you, Roland. You might know. What about your 1.5 million subscribers? They know. What about your boys? They know. What about people that walk through the streets throughout America because you roaming around all over the damn place? They know. If they know so much, Roland, why were you determined for Trump's lies not to be heard? If they know so much, Roland, because they listening to you, why were you so fixated on standing right there in the audience? And whenever Trump spoke, you came on this show and you said you were going to stand up and scream lies. If they know, because they listening to you and other folks who think like you and know what you know, then you wouldn't have to worry about doing that because they would have consumed your message and they would know he's lying, wouldn't they? You know better. And you know that most people are frustrated citizens who vote, who are mindful of the times that we're living in and want finite, definitive evidence about which side is right and which side is wrong with no convolution in the equation. And when reports like the DOJ comes out talking about the FBI on January 6th and parsing words like they weren't intentionally inaccurate. Well, why the hell add the word intentionally? You were inaccurate or you were inaccurate? Where the hell intentional comes from? That's a perception. That's an opinion. That's not a fact.
That's a report that said they weren't intentionally inaccurate. How can you prove somebody wasn't intentionally inaccurate? I know you know what you're talking about in politics. I know what I'm talking about in sports. I just thought that as two common sense people, we could relate to one another feeling frustrated on either side. See, you all the way left, in my opinion. I'm center.
You got that right. He all
I see bullshit on both sides. I know you do too. Better than me. The difference is you care a lot more about one side. I don't give a shit about either. I just want as close to the truth as I can get to elevate my level of understanding. I am sorry, Roland Martin, if that was such a bad thing that would get you so riled up that not only did you have to come at me, you had to throw on the cowboy hat to do it. But I like seeing it on you, bro. It looked good on you. Your panel, it is what it is. That's all I got to say about that.
Look, what I said, Stephen A. Smith, to be clear, was that your words are dangerous. And if you're not going to actually apply the same journalistic principles that you use to your work in sports, if you're not going to apply it to politics, then you might as well come out as 100% MAGA, because you're using MAGA talking points and you're Tucker Carlson-ly saying, I'm just asking questions. Case in point, you refer to the insurrection as an insurrection with air quotes. That's a MAGA talking point. Do you believe insurrection did not happen? Did you believe that it was a riot or a rally and just some people just got out of hand and that was what was going on? It was an insurrection. They disrupted the peaceful transfer of power. They did that. You can't just call that out journalistically. That's just a fact. And so, yeah, I called you out on that because to not speak that is to be dangerous. And then you said, oh, and they got this guy on the panel talking about he voted for Trump. He voted for Trump. He didn't vote for Kamala. Actually, what I said, Stephen A. Smith, was that I question whether you actually voted for Vice President Harris. And like you said, you're an expert in your own opinion. I'm an expert in my own opinion. So I'm just speaking my mind because I don't see how you can go at the Democrats in the way that you do. I'm somebody who critiques Democrats all the time. Roland critiques Democrats all the time. But the way you go at them, like I said, you have a lot of MAGA talking points. And you say things like, what happened with the FBI folks at the rally is even more, or insurrection, is even more evidence about the process being rigged. How do FBI personnel being at an insurrection talk about an election being rigged? And what does that have to do with Biden winning the election? He won by 80-something million votes, and Trump had like 70-something million votes. Like 80 is bigger than 70.
Welcome back, America. Stephen A. Smith. So could you see yourself seeing what you see now? And obviously, Donald Trump can't run for president again, but if he could, under the current circumstances, could you see yourself voting for him?
Quite possibly. I'm not going to sit up there and dismiss that anymore. I think we're beyond that. He would have to prove a lot, Mark. And I'm not talking about policy now for a second. Allow me to say this. What concerned me about Donald Trump, and the reason I voted against him and voted for Kamala Harris, was because I felt that he would be divisive, that he would create chaos because he demands such a level of loyalty and fealty to him. And that would take priority over governing our nation. That was my concern. And so I'm looking for both sides to work across the aisle from one another. Having said that, when you see some of the things that he said, if he follows through on some of the things that he has said, it's not just about eradicating inflation, improving the economy, obviously controlling our borders. These are all things that I care about. Make no mistake about that. And I certainly would support him in that regard. But it can't be just about fealty to him and loyalty to him. It has to be about getting the job done on behalf of what's in the best interest of the American people, as opposed to yourself, and not engaging in the kind of juvenile tendencies, tweeting all the time and going after people who are really much irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. You do things like that and you show that you're the adult in the room. Yeah. I don't think anybody could dismiss Donald Trump at this particular moment in time, not just because of him, but because of what we've seen the Democrats do. We're not falling for it any longer. The American people aren't falling for it any longer. I voted Democrat, and I got to tell you something right now. I don't like the fact that I did. I don't like what I'm saying. I don't want to hear about, we're about law. We're about a law. Nobody's above the law. Nobody's above the law. But then you go out and you pardon your son and you try to blame everybody else for it. I don't want to hear about defund the police. I don't want to hear about, there should be open borders. I don't want to hear this stuff. And I don't think most of the American people want to hear that. We're thinking about the state of affairs that's in. We're not about America only, but being about America and prioritizing what's going on in this nation with the desolate and the disenfranchised and everybody else in between, and looking out for the best interest of what it is for America. That is not a crime for an American politician or a commander-in-chief or a senator or a congressional figure to have that mentality. I want them to have that mentality. So I think about things along those lines. And I'm no longer interested in, nor do I believe any of us should be interested in listening to a bunch of fear-mongering to tell us who we shouldn't vote for. Why don't you come up with a plan that tells us why we should vote for you? That's what I'm interested in. And if Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Byron Donald, Marco Rubio, or the host of other Republican candidates coming down the pike, that's the kind of message that they're going to put forth. I'm down for it. I'm open-minded enough to make sure that I entertain that from a policy perspective. That's what I want for the American people. That's what I want for this nation.
That's why we love you, my man.
Stand. And as I look at President-elect Donald Trump coming into office, let me be very, very clear about what I support when it comes to him. So we're not misconstruing anything. I support eradicating inflation. I support lowering taxes. I support closing our borders. I support prioritizing national security. Yes, I do. I'm not going to go with his words about law and order, but damn it, it's one of my favorite shows for a reason. I like it. I believe in law and order. And I want to make sure that I'm clear about that. So everything that Donald Trump has preached about, I'm not against, which is why if he acts right and doesn't engage in pettiness and don't put incompetence in cabinet positions and stuff like that, I'm going to support the president. I don't want him to fail. I want him to succeed as long as it means the country succeeds, not him, the country.
So what he wanted was transparency for people to see the full workout, to see the full Colin Kaepernick. Again, you mentioned obviously Max is going to get in here. Like I said, I'm in the streets. Max almost seems blacker than you, Stephen A. with his commentary.
With all due respect, my brother.
I'm just saying, dog.
Wait a minute.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna check you right now. You don't cross.
I'm just saying.
Time. Wait a minute. You don't cross.
You got to jump in his ass. You got to jump in his ass. Jump in his ass. His ass. You gotta push back immediately. Jump in his ass.
That's why I clap back respectfully at my man Roland Martin, not his panelists chirping and mimicking and laughing and giggling in the sideline like anybody know who the hell they are.
Look, what I said, Stephen A. Smith, to be clear, was that your words are dangerous. And if you're not going to actually apply the same journalistic principles that you use to your work in sports, if you're not going to apply it to politics, then you might as well come out as 100% MAGA, because you're using MAGA talking points and you're Tucker Carlson-ly saying, I'm just asking questions. Case in point, you refer to the insurrection as an insurrection with air quotes. That's a MAGA talking point. Do you believe the insurrection did not happen? Did you believe that it was a riot or a rally and something just got out of hand and that was what was going on? It was an insurrection. They disrupted the peaceful transfer of power. They did that. You can't just call that out journalistically. That's just a fact.
And while I was there, I gave my thoughts on the 2024 election and expressed some regret about what has transpired with the Democrats and Vice President Kamala Harris. And I've said this on many, many occasions. I don't like what I'm seeing from the Democratic Party. I said it on Life, Liberty, and Levin to Mark Levin himself. I've said it to this audience on various occasions. I'm saying it again now. Nobody's backing up from it. Nevertheless, I have to tell you that, and I don't blame Mark Levin for this, but did you see the headline on Fox News? Did you see it? Did you see it? In case you didn't see it, put it up there for us, folks. Let them see it right there. Look at that headline right there. Stephen A. Smith regrets backing Vice President Harris, open to voting GOP, not interested in the fear mongering. Before I go to the actual clip of what I literally said, so I can show you all myself, let me state for the record, I throw no fault in the direction of Mark Levin for the headlines. As a reporter, as a commentator and pundit throughout the years, there have been many, many times where I have said something and having no responsibility for the headlines whatsoever. The headlines didn't completely accurately portray what I had said. So if I've gone through that, I'm certainly not going to blame Mark Levin, nor would I ever accuse him of misrepresenting me. But it is important that you all know exactly what I said, because headlines like that turn to go viral. So without further ado, this is just a small clip of Mark Levin asking me the question that he asked, and I want you to listen to my answer. Here it is.
Stephen A. Smith, so could you see yourself seeing what you see now? And obviously Donald Trump can't run for president again, but if he could, under this current circumstances, could you see yourself voting for him?
Quite possibly. I'm not going to sit up there and dismiss that anymore. I think we're beyond that. He would have to prove a lot, Mark. And I'm not talking about policy now. For a second, allow me to say this. What concerned me about Donald Trump, and the reason I voted against him and voted for Kamala Harris, was because I felt that he would be divisive, that he would create chaos because he demands such a level of loyalty and fealty to him. And that would take priority over governing our nation. That was my concern. And so I'm looking for both sides to work across the aisle from one another. Having said that, when you see some of the things that he said, if he follows through on some of the things that he has said, it's not just about eradicating inflation, improving the economy, obviously controlling our borders. These are all things that I care about. Make no mistake about that. And I certainly would support him in that regard. But it can't be just about fealty to him and loyalty to him. It has to be about getting the job done on behalf of what's in the best interest of the American people, as opposed to yourself, and not engaging in a kind of juvenile tendencies, tweeting all the time and going after people who are really much irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. You do things like that and you show that you're the adult in the room. Yeah. I don't think anybody could dismiss Donald Trump at this particular moment in time, not just because of him, but because of what we've seen the Democrats do. That is what I said. Anywhere in that headline, did you hear me say, I regret voting for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, but see, here's the problem, Stephen A. You didn't play the whole clip, right? Which, again, is hilarious. Stephen A. accusing Fox News, some intern, of taking the conversation that he said out of context and misrepresenting what he said in the headline, while Stephen A. misrepresents the actual conversation in and of itself by selectively choosing a clip that leaves out the part of the interview in which Stephen A. clearly says, right, as plain as day, I voted Democrat and I don't like the fact that I did, which is the textbook definition of regret.
I voted Democrat, and I got to tell you something right now. I don't like the fact that I did. I don't like what I'm saying. I don't want to hear about, oh, we're about law. We're about a law. Nobody's above the law. Nobody's above the law. But then you go out and you pardon your son and you try to blame everybody else for it. I don't want to hear about defund the police. I don't want to hear about, what, there should be open borders. I don't want to hear this stuff. And I don't think most of the American people want to hear that. We're thinking about the state of affairs that's in. We're not about America only, but being about America and prioritizing what's going on in this nation with the desolate and the disenfranchised and everybody else in between, and looking out for the best interest of what it is for America. That is not a crime for an American politician or a commander-in-chief or a senator or a congressional figure to have that mentality. I want them to have that mentality. So I think about things along those lines. And I'm no longer interested in, nor do I believe any of us should be interested in listening to a bunch of fear-mongering to tell us who we shouldn't vote for. Why don't you come up with a plan that tells us why we should vote for you? That's what I'm interested in. And if Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Byron Donald, Marco Rubio, or the host of other Republican candidates coming down the pike, that's the kind of message that they're going to put forth, I'm down for it. I'm open-minded enough to make sure that I entertain that from a policy perspective. That's what I want for the American people. That's what I want for this nation. But I think it's important to make this point. And this is directly aimed at conservative media. It may be because they've been vilified for years and they found themselves to be at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to the leftists on the media side. I get that part. But it doesn't negate the fact that when it comes to conservative media, they won't hesitate to misrepresent your words a bit for a better pro-Trump, anti-Democrat headline, because indeed they like having prominent, influential voices come over to their way of thinking. To some of them, not all, not most, but to some of them, it's like, oh my goodness, there are a lot of folks out there, that do think like us, that do side with us, that do favor our mode of thinking. And we're not as alienated as you think. And I think there's a lot of folks within conservative media that are prone to doing something like that, just like you can look on the left, because the liberal media will misrepresent your words in a heartbeat to make you seem more extreme and to work very, very hard to tie you in with the Trump and the MAGA folks. We've seen that happen to me.